Okay, so thanks for joining us. We got a special interview with Agape. So, as I like to start these interviews, tell us a bit about yourself.
So, hi, Chris. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. My name's Agape Ogbonda. I'm legal counsel for Swift. I'm from the UK, born and raised in London. Actually went to school with Chris for about 7 years, from 11 to 18, about that.
A long time.
Long time, yeah, decades ago, about that. But yeah, moved to Houston in 2013. Then came out here, did my master's in law as well, and ultimately I've been with Swift, which is a global workforce solutions company, since December of 2019. So I guess before we start, these are my views and not the views of Swift as well. So the disclaimer, as you should. But yeah, no, happy to be on board.
Cool. Thanks for that brief background. Um, so, you've had quite a bit of a journey. You've moved from country to country, as I have. Hopefully, it's been uh, smooth sailing for the most part. Um, but you mentioned that you pursued law, and from whether it's an immigrant background or specifically speaking for me, a Caribbean background, there's only what, three major professions: law, medicine, and engineering. Everything else is a failure. But I'm just saying that that's just the old school mentality. For me, it's very different. So, and that's why we've got this series to speak about all these different options available to people. But for you, why specifically law? What sort of dreams and goals inspired you to go down that path and ultimately end in your success?
Yeah, so I'm one of those Nigerians who went into law, but without the actual pressure from their parents. Like, my parents never pushed, like, oh, you must be a lawyer. We need a lawyer in the family. It just so happened that I had that interest in of my own self, and my siblings went into non-traditional career paths, and my parents were happy with that and okay with that. They weren't going to push us into things that we didn't want to do, and longevity-wise, it doesn't make sense to push your kids to do things that don't make sense. So for me, it was getting to university, realizing that I didn't like maths, didn't like science, didn't really like economics, and enjoyed English, enjoyed history, and just enjoyed arguing with people. So I think
Oh
naturally,
yeah, I can attest to that. You like arguing, that's for sure.
I think it was a natural fit. I wanted a career that would have decent compensation, would be challenging, and ultimately would be fun. And so that's how I ended up going into the legal profession. Always wanted to work in the corporate environment as well. So it's just a natural fit, and obviously my parents were then supportive of that as well throughout my career. So blessed to have that too.
Yeah, good to know that you didn't get that parental pressure, as it were, and you figured things out for yourself. So interesting to note, you kind of figured it out as you went along. You mentioned that when you were at university, you took a liking to English, history, etc. So sometimes you hear some people tell their story and they say, from the age of 4, I woke up and I realized that I wanted to heal people, hence why I went into medicine. Or from the age of 4, I was arguing. I know you like to argue. You found that out later in life. So there wasn't necessarily a dream from that early on. It was just something that you figured out through trial and error and assessing what you were better at than other things.
Yeah, pretty much. There's once you realise that, right, fine, I'm going to university. What do I want to do? Like I said, I don't want to do English. Don't want to do maths. Don't want to do anything science related. Don't want to do anything economics related. Was interested in history, but I thought to myself, given that for AS level and A level, I've pretty much done some of the same subjects that I've done since year 7. So done World War II, done the Civil Rights Movement. I've done, like, I didn't want to do the same subjects again at university, and looking at some of the course modules, yeah, I'm staying away from that. English, I wasn't sure what that career would look like. Lack of research on my part. So I thought, you know what, I do enjoy arguing, and the legal profession is one that's highly respected. So there might be a career there. Again, these plans weren't set in stone. This is kind of what I see myself doing, and there's some general path out there. So did law from the age of 18 to 21, a 3-year degree. During that time, I also, played around or experimented with the world of investment banking and thought that that's something that I would end up doing as well. So it wasn't a very clear, like, I'm going in at 18, this is the plan, and this is where I want to be. Although, yes and no, but that plan was also somewhat flexible as well. And then as you kind of go along, you get a sense of what you like and what you don't like. And a legal profession is still very broad. You can do so many different types of law.
Okay, cool. So you had an overarching high-level plan of this is kind of the area I want to fall in. But another thing I want to pull out from what you said is you specifically followed things that you were interested in. And it feels like this is like the 10th time I'm saying this now, but it's saying I always love find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's true not just in this situation, but many other situations. Make sure you like what you're doing. That way it doesn't necessarily feel that much like heavy work, or at least you'll be able to work even harder at what you put your mind to because you simply enjoy it. So, great.
Absolutely. I'll agree with that. Like, even now, I'm at the point where my career, I don't know how many hours I put in, but because you ultimately enjoy what you do and you're challenged by what you do, like, intellectually challenged, I won't say fun, because you go through periods where it's just tough. Like work is, like COVID, for example, it's been a very difficult time where you are constantly learning about new laws on a daily basis and then trying to make sense of that for the business. So that's been a tough environment, but ultimately you enjoy what you do. You enjoy the skills that you have developed and what you bring to the table. So do what you love, do what you're passionate about, do what you're interested in, and otherwise it will feel like a chore.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for adding that. And often I find when you're talking to people about their career journey, they focus on their start, and then people just look at where they are today, which is a huge jump. There's a lot of questions in between, I'm sure. There's a lot of movement in between, and even you said that you thought you'd potentially want to pursue law in a financial or investment banking area, and you're working in a completely different area of law at the moment. So, question, what was your first professional job once you wrapped up university? What did it look like? What sort of roles and responsibilities did you have? I see you smiling because I know this is going to be a story.
So I finished my undergrad in 2010, then did 1 year at law school. So a 3-year law degree followed by 1 year at law school in the UK. That's how it works. So graduated 2011, so during the financial recession or the aftermath of the 08 recession. And I had bills to pay the next day. So as much as I say, look, this is what I wanted to get into, my hands were kind of full. So I have bills to pay. And it's very difficult to get a job right now in the legal profession. So I ended up going into recruitment. So I was a sales recruiter for 2 years. I actually enjoyed it, just wasn't good at it, is the honest assessment of that time period. Loved it. But sometimes you can love something and be absolutely terrible at it. And that was me. I was that guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was my first professional job. And again, long hours, 8 to 8. You're on the phone, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with candidates. But yeah.
No, that's good. And actually, the reason why I usually ask that, it's to show others that think that career paths are linear, that it's anything but linear. So I share a very similar path in that when I graduated, I wanted to jump into marketing. I thought I wanted to see the creative side of marketing, less the sales side. That was go. Did that happen? No, not at all. I had to take almost a scenic route. I ended up in retail, customer service, working for Bell Canada, telecommunications company. And then I even ended up doing an unpaid internship for close to a year. I think it was about 8 months. And again, the idea of pursuing something that you love made it that much more bearable that I wasn't being paid for it. But again, all that to say that there is a journey. It's not necessarily A, B, C. And throughout that journey, at least I learned a number of skills that I use in my current career path now. Were you able to pick up some skills that you learned during that sales period of your career that you can use now?
Well, I'll fast forward to where I'm at now. I'm now legal counsel for a recruitment company.
Yeah.
And so the 2 years that I spent in a profession that I wasn't good at, but I enjoyed, I think helped me to understand the clients, like the internal clients that I work with on a day-to-day basis, to understand the industry. And I think it was that experience that then, put me ahead when I spoke to the first company that I worked with here in the US, a British recruitment company, who said we need someone to come in on the compliance side. You obviously understand the legal side of things, but you understand the people, you understand the industry. And so at that time, you're thinking these 2 years have been a waste. Like, what have I done with my life? Oh my God, this looks like I'm so far behind, whatever. But it's very strange how things work together. And you don't see it at the time you're going through it, but years back, like, okay, this was an internship essentially for 2 years that helped me to understand exactly what I'm dealing with, and helped me to be better at my job now. So that's just general experience, as well as some of the core skills that you get from just determination, resiliency, as you pick up in sales, and just being able to speak to people. And it's strange how when you talk to people who haven't been in recruitment, just the fear they haven't picked up the phone. And recruiters will do that all day, every day, and you learn a lot just from that skill. Just there's a fearlessness that comes with that role. So just in terms of some of the other skills, and not necessarily industry knowledge, those are things that I picked up as well.
Right, and there's a reason why they say that hindsight is 2020. Everything looks clearer, and you can actually connect the dots. But when you're actually going through something, it feels haphazard. Like, oh, am I in the right place? Is this just a waste of time? But clearly not. There's a greater good, as I like to think. Things that we aren't necessarily fully in control of, but I believe that at least for those that are Christians amongst us, God does direct our path as long as we stay close to Him. So great to know. And similarly, I find myself sharing a lot more in this interview. I went through a very similar circumstance where, again, I jumped right into marketing, thought that was my end destination. Ended up getting introduced to project management. I was not seeking for project management by any means. It was something that someone mentioned along the way. Didn't know what it was, researched it, found out I was pretty good at it. Fast forward, 4 or 5 years, that's the bulk of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and continue to grow in that skill set. So nothing is by accident. Make sure that you make the most of every situation that you're in, and really think about what core skills can I develop at this time and potentially leverage for future parts of my career path.
That's so true. I think you never know why you're in a place when you're there, but whilst you're there, there is so much that you can learn, and you never know how you sort of will be come the future. So I think the key is to be good at what you do wherever you are in life, and those skills will take you a long way.
Right. And another thing I always like to do, yes, even though we said that hindsight is 2020, I like to reflect, do almost like a little retrospective on whether it's a recent occurrence or even looking at the past 3 or 5 years and think about how that went and was there anything that I could have done differently. So, similarly, I'm going to ask you that question. Uh, from your current career journey or path, is there anything that you would have done differently or changed to maximize the potential of where you are right now?
I guess two things: listen to my dad more. First and foremost,
Yeah.
as I've grown older, I've come to realize my dad's been right on so many different things, but I won't go into that in case he hears this. Second, secondly, I think the key is also mentorship within your career. Those who have trailed and gone ahead in the path that you seek to take. Like, they've dealt with so many of the different issues that you think you're dealing with for the first time. I remember thinking back when I wanted to become a lawyer, I'm going to be the first guy from the first guy from here to do this.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
But because I didn't see those role models, I thought I was doing this alone, and I'm going to do this on my own. Absolutely not. There are people who have done what you've done and can give you the guidance to help you navigate and make wiser choices and be aware of the learning experiences in front of you as you're going through them. So seeking a mentor, seeking several mentors who can, break things down for you. I think that's something. Had I had 5 years ago, I don't know where my career would be now. Not to say that I regret that, but again, you don't know what you don't know, and that's what a mentor shines a light on. So get yourself a good mentor.
Yeah, again, you're hitting the nail on the head every single question. I couldn't have said it better myself. And similarly, I realize that in retrospect, had I had that, high level guidance or mentorship, that would have helped me along the way so much more. Hence why I'm trying to provide platforms through visionaries or even through this interview series. If you don't necessarily know personally someone in your sphere, there are other things that you can get advice from, right? We're providing interview series where you can plug into that quote unquote mentorship from a high level from other people, learn from them. And I know you mentioned your dad. I suppose that's a form of mentorship as well, right? They say that the wisest people learn from the mistakes of other people rather than making their own mistakes. So it's almost a way of traveling. Let me see if this makes sense. Seeing the future before you get it, right? Before you get there, and being able to create a playbook so you don't have to, navigate the minefield, as it were. So interesting.
Yeah, I think one, like I said, my dad and getting a mentor, and I think the two really are the same.
Right.
Ultimately, like, my dad wasn't a lawyer, and so he couldn't have given me direct help with how to navigate the legal world. But the things that he said and he continues to say are still things that I would expect from a mentor, even with the industry experience. So I think it's key to just make sure that you have people in your life who care about your progression, care about making sure that you become the best that you can be, and listen to them. They don't necessarily have to be within your industry if you can't find someone within your industry, but particularly when you find someone who actually seeks to invest in you or takes interest in what you do, know that they're interested in pouring into you, and there are things that you can then gain as a result from that if you just be patient, learn, and they will push you. They will try and hold a mirror up to you and show you where your flaws are. And you have to take that on board, be humble, and be motivated to change yourself for the better. So it's a difficult process to be told this is what you're not good at, because nobody wants to hear it. But if you show that humility and you genuinely want to be the best version of you, you'll take it on board to get to that end result. So.
Right, I love that, and I'm going to pull out a couple of things in case some people missed it. So this idea of what I'm going to call accountability, right? Someone that's able to shine a light at your dark areas and say, hold up one second, yeah, you're doing things, but you're not doing it as strongly as you are capable of doing, and pushing you to excel. So that's one part, and I think that really helps you to grow, right? Um, and with that help or guidance of the right people, you're allowed to grow a lot quicker than you would have if you had been left to your own devices. And another thing that you made mention to, you don't necessarily have to specifically have a mentor in one place. And I like to highlight that because typically people feel that they can only look for mentors in the career space, for example. I want to go into law. I need someone that's, been practicing law for 15 years, and that's the only quote unquote mentor that I need in my life. But your life is a huge collection of different areas. And I share, at least through some of the exercises I do with my mentees, there's a wheel of about 11 or 12 different areas of life, whether it be social, career, health, and fitness, right? All those different areas. And there's no one person that's an expert at all those things. So make sure you seek advice from those most knowledgeable in those areas, whether you class them as a one-to-one mentor or you're using mentorship from resources of online, at far mentors to really plug in and maximize your potential.
And I think there's a key thing there. You might be on a path that no one generally has gone through before. And so looking for a mentor who has done what you've done is actually impossible. That doesn't mean that you can't find mentors who have done things similar or just from different walks of life who can still guide you on this is how you approach certain issues. There's that old saying, nothing is new under the sun. We're just approaching different challenges in different ways. So there's always someone who will have some guidance who can help you to even just change the way you think, broaden the way that you think so that you can tackle issues that even though they haven't seen it, they can still give you a perspective that will help you get to where you need to be. So
yeah, I agree as well, and it's all about perspective. The more perspectives you have, the better that you can perform and progress as well. So we spent some time talking about the past, whether it be your career journey and also certain lessons that you've learned from past. I'm going to ask you a question about looking forward now. I'm sure that you're someone that plans and has certain goals for yourself. So, question, what are you trying to accomplish in the next quarter? And by quarter, I mean, say, on a 3 month horizon.
so I think particularly for the line of work that I do. So, like I said, I'm in-house lawyer for Swift Legal Counsel there. And one of the major areas that I provide some of my guidance and legal analysis essentially is in employment and labour law, which has been rapidly changing as a result of COVID-19. And my role sees me looking after Canada, the US, and Latin America, particularly Brazil. So I've been there since December 2019, and like I said, that remit includes Brazil. So I want to get a better handle of our Latin American operations, and if that means learning Portuguese on the side, then hey, it might help. But no, other than that, is to steady the ship in terms of what's going on with COVID-19 and really start to. We don't know when we will come out of this. Obviously, it's an unknown, but I think it's been very frantic across all industries. So, yeah, like I said, steadying the ship where if this is the new norm, we know what we're doing, we have a blueprint, and we then start to deviate if and where necessary based on whatever happens. But steadying the ship is how I'd like to refer to it. So that's the next quarter's goal. And beyond that, I think COVID-19 has been useful in a way for resetting certain things. And so you can then, hey, look, business isn't as high and it's not as busy as it used to be, essentially. So we can start to look at maybe some of the systemic issues that we had in the business and really start to unravel them and then rebuild essentially, so that when you come out of COVID-19 or come out of this period, then you have a much more efficient operation as well. So right now we're starting to really unpack certain things within the business and say, okay, let's fix this. This is the perfect time because we don't have all of the distractions of the day-to-day that we would have during peak operations. So let's unpack this and let's really rebuild this properly.
I love that answer. Reason being, the go nature that I typically have, I sometimes neglect the time to sit, reflect, and just strengthen or hunker down, and make sure things are operating as they should do. And actually, exactly what you mentioned reminded me of a book by Stephen Covey, The Seven. I cannot remember the title off by heart. I think it's The Seven Highly Effective Habits of Successful People, or thereabouts. I'll find it. I'll send it to the community or put it in the comments once I get it correct. But one of those principles he mentions is sharpen the saw. And that's, I believe, is exactly what you're trying to mention there, to make sure things are going and according to plan, that you're taking time to strengthen and speak to things that you've been doing rather than reaching for the stars and starting something afresh. Make sure things are a smooth, well-oiled machine, as it were.
Yeah, precisely.
Good, I like that. Okay, we're going to switch yet again in another area now. Thinking about leadership. What's the most important leadership lesson you've learned, and how is it valuable?
For me, it's knowing your weaknesses. Just knowing what your limitations are and then making that decision as to whether or not you improve on your weaknesses or improve on your strengths, depending on which side of the line you ascribe to. So some people believe, your weaknesses will always be there, you can improve them, but the improvements will be incremental. How about you work on your strengths and improve them to the point where they almost negate your weaknesses? Others just believe, you've got to perfect your weaknesses to be an overall better player. So either way, whichever side of the line you fall on, I think for me, know what your weaknesses are, know how they come into play in the workplace or just in your interactions with people, and plan around them or have a strategy as to how you deal with them. So yeah, that's one of the key things, because then you can't be effective as a leader if you don't know what your weaknesses are.
Again, spot on with these answers today, and I wouldn't have been first thing that comes to mind, but it is extremely important that as a successful leader, as you mentioned, you're aware of your blind spot or weaknesses. And specific to the industry that I'm in, project management, team building, the most effective thing that a successful leader can do is make sure that they build a team that plugs those weaknesses. So let me give you an example. Say that I don't know, I'm in expedition, right? And you need to have someone that's really good at reading maps. You need to have someone that's really good at tying ropes, in order to make sure that you have a successful expedition, right? That if I, as a leader, am not good at either of those things, in my group of people that I take along with me, I'm going to make sure that I have those two people that are really good at those things, so I can concentrate on other things. So, agreed. You need to be aware of your blind spots, build up a team in that leadership sense to make sure that you have a system or a group that are able to fully function and that don't have necessarily exactly the same skill set, but complementary skill sets.
And in that example, in that example, you've identified what the weakness is, and rather than working on that weakness within yourself, for example, you said actually let me build a team around who are actually strong in those weak areas, so I don't have to focus on building that up myself. So again, you then choose or decide which strategy you want to take in terms of dealing with your weaknesses, but because you've identified it, you could then deal with it before it becomes a problem.
Right. It gives
So
the power of
the
choice.
Yeah, the first step always, what are my weaknesses?
Yeah.
Okay, how am I going to deal with them? Am I going to work on them, or am I going to work on my strengths? Have someone else fill in the gaps where I'm weak. So that's key for me.
Cool. Love that. Okay, in terms of resources, and this is, I suppose, speaking about self-improvement now, are there any key things that you plug into, be it articles you read, books you read, podcasts that you listen to, that provide value to you and you'd want to share that would provide value to other people?
So in terms of value to me, which might not be of value to anyone else outside of the legal industry, Lexology is my daily go-to just to give me an update on what's going on in the legal world and how that might impact business. But I think there are two primary podcasts that I do listen to, HBR being one of them.
HBR is in Harvard Business Review.
Yep.
That's the one. Okay, good.
So I think that's everyone's go-to. The other one that I've been listening to is the Corporate Homie. So this is run by two twin sisters in the US. One of them is a lawyer, one of them is an investment banker. I believe, or she may have just left and gone into the non-profit world, but they give their insight into how to navigate the careers essentially and how to navigate the corporate world, and so that's been useful in terms of how to network or strategies around networking or how to ask for a raise. These are simple things, but at the same time they can be very difficult to do and do them successfully. So whether it's goal setting, whether it's being a better time manager, a better team player, but all the different facets that will come up and they field questions from their listeners, and that might be the topic for today. So Corporate Homie podcast is one that I would recommend as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that they're good reasons. I know you said some are very specific to the legal field, but the last one that you mentioned, I think it would be useful to everyone to plug into. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping things up, is there anything that I should have asked you but haven't?
I think we've covered all of it, really. Just then, I think in terms of inspiration, perhaps, and what inspired me, beyond my family, my parents, my spouse, I think the key for me is also, we spoke about this, just looking at the brand, the music industry in the UK, which came from very, very, very little in the early 2000s, and watching so many of those people just continue grinding hard and making opportunities for themselves, even when, as an industry, it was shut down by the police. It was for political reasons. It was shut down by bars. It was shut down by clubs, but they kept plugging and they kept working hard. And when you look at what that industry has become in the UK, I think that's been a massive inspiration for me to say, just stay grinding, stay learning, stay doing what you do. But the key is to be excellent at what you do, and that will create opportunities and that will open doors for you. So even when you may look at your career and feel it's not where you want it to be, I think if you continue just working hard, doors will open in ways that you can't imagine. But it's all down to your work ethic, and it's all down to how seriously you want to, be good and move to the next level. So
I love that. So work hard, be the best at what you're putting your hand to, and kind of persevere through any sort of obstacles that might come your way, and the payoff would be great.
Yeah,
right.
There you go.
I love that. All right, last question. We call it our leadership question or anchor question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ooh, good question. Well, I'd like to see myself in 5 years as a GC, general counsel of a company, but just going back to, I know my career, I know other people's, I'm also flexible in the sense that where you would like to see yourself and where you do end up seeing yourself in 5 years can be two completely different things. So I don't, how do I put this? I don't tie myself to one goal. Like this is the aim, but I'm also open to the fact that it can go off in so many different directions. And as long as I'm good at what I do, then I have some control over the direction it takes. Like you said yourself, project management wasn't what you ever saw yourself getting into, but the door opened and you took it. And because you were good at what you did, you become a success at it. So, yeah, the easy answer is GC.
That's the aim. Yeah. Let's see what God says, because another saying that I've learned so true over the last few years. Men will make their plans and God laughs at it. Right? So, but we still make our desires known and act with excellence, as you said. I think that's another common theme that our listeners should really take away from this. Work with everything that you have to do a great job. Put everything you have into what you're doing with that theme of excellence, perseverance, and the payoff would be great. Agape, thank you very much. As usual, there's so many different streams of value within this one interview that I'm sure our community will benefit from greatly. Appreciate you.
No worries, glad to be part of this.
Okay.